and welcome to the Cultivating Calmness Podcast. I'm going to talk today a little bit about mental health and exercise, how the two go hand in hand, and some of those more specifics. No, I'm not just going to sit here and say exercise is important, it's good for your mental health, which it is. But I want to get into some of the more specific reasons, the things that maybe your providers, your therapists, your doctors aren't really explaining to you. And then I will also get to a little bit on cycle syncing and how that is also an important factor if you're a female, and what exercise has to do with that. So if you'll just stick with me today, we will talk some about all of that. So exercise and mental health, right? You've probably heard how throughout your life that this is important. I myself talk about it with my clients, but we don't always get into the specifics. And this is kind of a pet peeve of mine. So I'm working to get better at providing information to my clients. Because I'll often have them come in and they'll tell me something like, oh, my doctor said that I need to drink more water. Great. But when I ask, okay, did they explain to you what they meant by drink more water? Often the response is, no, I just assumed I just needed to drink more water, have more bottles of water a day. And that is true, but it's not the whole truth. It is not all the information that you need to make an informed decision, and to drink more water thoughtfully. I'm not going to get into all of that, but I have had that conversation numerous times with clients in the last couple of months. And I am, I'm not a doctor, but I do have, knowledge and things that I've learned about holistic health and mental health and functional medicine that I've learned over the years. And so I can speak a little bit to that. But I often refer to other providers to provide more information on this. But your body needs certain nutrients. It needs electrolytes. It needs things to sustain itself. So just drinking more water is not all that you need. Same with exercise. It's not just, hey, get out and exercise. Getting moving, period, is good for you. It's good for your body. We want you to get up and get moving. That can be hard when you are experiencing things like anxiety and specifically even just depression. It's very hard to find that motivation. But why? What is going on? And I often talk about how we sometimes have to force ourselves to go do it anyway. Do it even though it's hard, because of all of the things that are going on inside our body that are going to be affected by the exercise that we're doing. What are those things? Exercise is it affects your brain, but why is it affecting your brain? Well, because of all those neurotransmitters that are going to be enhanced and going to be improved because of the exercise that you're doing, because of the food that you're eating. We talked a little bit about nutrients and food in the last couple of weeks. So I'm not going to talk about food at all today. Endorphins, right? When you exercise, you're going to increase endorphins. What are endorphins, right? Endorphins are those feel-good hormones. Those are those things that make you feel good when you're exercising, especially when you're exercising in the right way. I'll get to that in a little bit, but if you do the wrong exercise for your body or for how you're feeling, even like if you just got over a cold and you're doing a high intensity workout, your body may still not be in a place where it's able to tolerate you doing that kind of exercise. So it's possible you could be doing more harm than good. So it is important to pay attention to your body. It's important to know what your hormones are doing, so that you can utilize those feel-good hormones and those feel-good neurotransmitters and things that are going on inside your body to the best of your ability. We don't want to stunt them. We don't want to make things worse because we're supposed to be doing something. And so, like I said, we'll get to that in a little bit. So when we exercise, we do those aerobic exercises. So those are those more like high intensity workouts, like running, and not just easy swimming, but right, like if you were training to swim and like it's swim practice, you're not just doing some swimming like you might see at the summer pool where people are doing laps. Excuse me. But they're not racing, right? When you are getting your heart rate up, you're doing that aerobic exercise and you're boosting the endorphins that are naturally inside your body. That then when you increase those endorphins, it alleviates those symptoms of anxiety and depression, right? We know this. We know that it makes us feel good, but sometimes getting there is the problem. If you're feeling depressed and you're laying in bed and just thinking about getting out of bed and getting dressed and going outside and going for a run is exhausting. It's how do I know I'm going to feel afterwards? I'm probably going to feel better, even if it's just a little bit. And little by little, if I do more and more and more of that, I will feel better and better and better over time. So another thing that is enhanced and improved with exercise is cortisol. Now, cortisol, depending on what we're doing and when, often our cortisol will be decreased because it's reducing stress. So again, it's probably going to be dependent on what type of exercise you're doing and how it's stressing your body. So it's important to know your body, what's going on within you, so that you're not pushing it. You're not doing too much for you. And you're the only one who really knows that. But sometimes we can push ourselves too hard and we think we're doing what's best. But maybe we're not. If you're feeling completely exhausted after a workout, it may not be the best workout for you in that moment. It's not saying that you can't get there. It's not saying that you can't do it at all. Just something to consider and think about when you're thinking about exercising and you're thinking about doing it to improve your mood and your mental health. So cortisol is our stress hormone. It kind of is released during stress and stressful situations, trauma. There's all kinds of stress that we experience. There's good stress and bad stress, and cortisol is a big part of that. So often our cortisol can be too high and we're suffering from that because we're in this constant state of stress. If your body is going through something, and there's something underlying conditions going on that maybe you're unaware of, your body is then under stress and your cortisol can be higher. Even if you feel like your life situation is not stressful, your body could be under stress. So stress can be taken in many different ways. So that's an important thing to consider when you're thinking like, why is my cortisol high? I don't feel stressed at all. That could be one of the explanations. So when we exercise, it is a natural stress reliever and can naturally help to lower those levels of cortisol in our system. And we can do that with the moderate to lower intensity workouts such as yoga, walking, Pilates, different things like that, and having that regular motion and helping to get your body moving and building like that stress tolerance and resilience in your exercise. So yoga is one of those tools that can help with building resilience and kind of that muscle memory. And it can also improve your mood because you will see those changes when you do yoga. Some people are really against yoga. Some people are really for yoga. I happen to like yoga. I am no expert by any means. I'm personally actually getting back into doing more yoga on a regular basis. And I am finding, just as what I tell people, is that when you do yoga, as with many other exercises, the more you do it, the better you get. So if you've never done yoga before, you're afraid of it, you're like, I can't do all those movements, I can't bend in the way they bend, and that's okay. Yoga isn't, in my opinion, yoga isn't meant, you're not meant to go into yoga and be an expert at it and know what you're doing. often, most of the yoga classes I've been to, they will show you how to do it. And obviously the teachers are very flexible and can do the movements exactly how they're supposed to, and to the extent that they are as far as they can go, right? I am often not there, so you do yoga to what you are capable and able to do, right? If you can only do a half bend, you do a half bend, right? And over time, if you are consistent with it and you keep going, you build on that. Your body starts to be able to do it more and more. Before you know it, you'll be able to do the full bend. You'll be able to do the full extension. It's just going to take you more time to get there, but you're still increasing your heart rate. You're still building endurance. You're still building, breathing techniques and improving your mood. There's lots of things that can improve with yoga. So it's a physical, mental, spiritual practice which uses breath, meditation, and movement, all of those things together. And it's about improving all of those things and using your breath, which we do in mental health, which we do as coping strategy, is to breathe. So yoga often teaches you to breathe through whatever the pain is, or breathe through the movement. And it teaches you how to breathe in certain ways. Like you breathe in when you do a certain movement and you breathe out when you do a different type of movement. It teaches you how to hold that, how to, kind of drag it out and make your breath last longer. All things that are beneficial when I'm in therapy. And when we're trying to focus on maybe reducing anxiety, because it allows you to focus on that breath and notice where the breath is coming from, where you want the breath to go. That's another thing that happens in yoga as well, is that they may say things like breathe into your knee, right? Or breathe into the area that's hard. Now, we know that we don't have lungs in our knees. The idea is, though, that you're giving that attention and that focus to that area, and something just happens when we do that. No, your oxygen, your lung isn't traveling to your knee. Nothing like that is happening. Excuse me. But when we give our attention to that area, it allows us to, it's really hard to explain, but it allows us to find that ability to practice mindfulness, to be present in that area and focus on whether it's movement that needs to happen, or relaxation that needs to happen, or even compassion for ourselves. If we're not able to do a certain movement to, the ability of the people around us, that can be hard to watch and see, like, oh, I can't do it as good as them. And that judgment starts to happen. Yoga allows us to be able to refocus and say, look, I am doing what I am capable of doing. And that's what's important. And that if I keep this up, I will also be able to do that someday, but I'm not going to be able to do it right now today. And that is okay. We do that a lot in therapy. It's stop the comparison, stop looking at other people, and just focus on what you can do and what you are doing right now, what boundaries you're able to set. And yoga is a good way to help with that. Yoga helps us to get back into our parasympathetic. So that's that rest and digest. We have our sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. And when we're in yoga, we're trying to get into relaxation, rest and digest. Now there's different types of yoga. There's the relaxation kind, that's just slow movements, breathing, focusing on stretching, focusing on holding positions. And then there's yoga that's building and strengthening, and it considers all those other things as well. There's like hot yoga, and I don't even know how many different types of yoga. There's lots of different types of yoga out there. So, it's not just one type of yoga, but if you've never done yoga, I encourage you to try some of those lower, more calming, relaxation type practices and classes, which you can find. A lot of places that do yoga have various levels. So you want to start on the lower end and build. You want to build your confidence as well, and that will help with that. So don't start too high, because you'll probably be discouraged if you do that. We want to start lower and build with yoga. I think I've already mentioned, but yoga helps with that calming effect and reducing that stress. So we talked about cortisol. Yoga can help with reducing stress and lowering that cortisol. So it can also depend on what time of the day. If you find that your cortisol is higher in the evening when it should be coming down, yoga may be a good tool or resource for you to use to start to lower that cortisol, to get you into a rest and digest type of state of mind and body sensations, versus doing a run at 8 o'clock in the evening. That may not be what's best for you if you already have high cortisol in the evening. So I hope that makes sense. Doing things that are lower on the scale will help to reduce that stress and hopefully help you to get better rest and better sleep. If you have higher cortisol in the evening, that's not going to be good for you. So we don't want to make it worse by doing a high intensity workout in the evening. Those are better for you in the morning. It activates you, wakes you up, helps get you going. And those may be good for morning. So if you're not a morning person, you may consider changing your exercise routine and maybe trying to do exercise in the morning. Yes, it may be hard to get out of bed because you're tired, but could that have a beneficial effect on your hormones? Probably, possibly. It may be good to talk to somebody about that. Somebody who specifically knows more about hormones maybe than I do. We know that exercise is helpful for reducing symptoms of anxiety and depression. Usually that's because we're increasing those endorphins, dopamine, serotonin. Those are those natural antidepressants. So that's why we say exercise when you're depressed, because there's science that shows that there's a reduction of sometimes up to or past 30% of those, depression and anxiety symptoms when we exercise. So that could be any type of exercise, really: walking, jogging, swimming, cycling. It could be weights, it could be intervals. There's all kinds of gyms out there that have specific types of training. There's the 𝗏𝗏𝗏 there's those rowing specific, that's just rowing. There's a lot of yoga gyms, Pilates gyms, things that have a very specific focus, and you find what's good for you and what works for you, and those are likely to help you. You can do your own routine. There's this thing called YouTube, and you can find your own videos. I was doing that for a little while. I kind of got out of that, but I'm working on getting back into that. So that you can do things at home. If you don't want to buy a gym membership, you don't have to buy a gym membership to get exercise. If you live in a safe area, you can walk the neighborhood. I figured out a path, and I know exactly what path I have to take to make a mile. And if I want to do a certain amount of miles, I'll do that path a certain amount of times. And I'm close to home, and I can stop, and I don't have to carry my water. If I want to pass my house, I'll pass my house. I know, once every mile, and I can get a drink of water, and that's what works for me. So finding what works for you is also, a good thing. And that takes a little bit of trial and error. Let's see. So when it comes to like that holistic approach, I'm all about the holistic approach and, what is helpful. So holistic is not just, it's not just saying, hey, go exercise. It's saying like, why are we exercising? What else do we need to do in addition to exercising? Are you going to therapy? Are you working on your diet? Are there supplements or medications that you're taking that are going to help along with everything else that you're doing? So I don't want you to do just one thing, but if you're in the process of getting started, it's good, starting somewhere. So yes, if it's exercise today, do it. I'm glad you're doing it, but let's not forget that a holistic approach is a well-rounded approach. It's, am I doing things in every area to help me? Building friendships, spiritual growth. Do I have, a religious practice? Do I have anything that I believe in? And if not, am I working on finding that? You don't have to do that every day. If I want to find a church, am I taking steps to find a church that I want to be a part of? If not, there's no time like the present. A lot of churches have services on Sundays. Some have them on other days of the week. So maybe it's, hey, this Sunday I'm going to pick a church and I'm going to go, right? It's something like that. Eating, am I, do I have a practice of getting fast food on a daily basis? So maybe I start by saying, hey, just one day a week, I'm going to not do it, or I'm going to reduce it by a certain amount. I want to eat out less often. Some people go cold turkey. I'm never going to eat out again. Great. Some people just, that's a little too hard. Okay. Baby steps are okay, but are you taking the steps? That's the question. So if you're not, think about what steps you can take to start to get on that path. That's what we mean by holistic. That's what we mean by functional, is we're doing more things and not just one single thing. Another thing that I want to mention, I mentioned in the beginning here, was cycle syncing. So yes, exercise is important. I want you to get out there. I want you to exercise. And I am not an expert on cycle syncing, but it is something for you to potentially look into. What is cycle syncing? So cycle syncing is specific to women because our hormones change specific to our menstrual cycle, whereas men have the same hormones as women, but they have them in different amounts and they don't fluctuate and go up and down like women's do. They just don't. So women have to pay specific attention, and their workout routine, their diets, sometimes need to be specific to their cycle because it's going to have an effect on their cycle. Their cycle is going to have an effect on the way that they feel. So if you are unaware, I'm just going to briefly touch on the different stages in our cycle, kind of what can happen and what's happening with our hormones. And again, I'm not going to go into super detail. I just want to touch on these and give you an idea of what you may want to consider if you are thinking about wanting to get back into exercise, or if you're already exercising. This may be something to consider, changing up your exercise routine so that it matches your cycle, so that you are helping yourself. Because if you're exercising in the wrong way, or a way that is draining you, are you really helping yourself? Probably not. Okay. So you have your 4 stages in your cycle. You have your menstrual period, which is that like first 1 to 5-ish days. The numbers kind of are going to be an estimation based on you as an individual. Then you have your follicular phase, which is usually days around 6 to 14. That's that pre-egg release stage. Then you have your ovulation stage. That's the egg release stage. Those are usually days 15 through 17, again, give or take. And then you have your luteal phase. That's the longest phase in your cycle. That's the post-egg release. And those are usually days 18 to 28 to the end, to when you then start to menstruate again. So in your menstrual phase, that's when your estrogen and progesterone are really low, right? You're menstruating, you're bleeding, you're releasing everything that you have stored up to prepare to hold that egg, the fertilized egg, which didn't get fertilized. Then in that follicular phase, that's where your estrogen is climbing until it reaches its peak by the end of that phase. Then you have your ovulation, which is when the luteinizing hormone and the the follicle stimulating hormone, the FSH, are reaching their peak. So that's that LH surge that's happening, in those like 3-day period of ovulation. And then your luteal phase is where your progesterone eventually peaks. Your estrogen is still rising, but it's not as high as it was during your follicular phase. That is what is kind of happening with should be happening with your hormones during those phases. Okay. So you can already hear, if you're just listening, your hormones are changing and fluctuating in a 28-day period. And so your mood is changing and fluctuating. So I will often ask people in my sessions, what's happening? Where are they in their cycle? Because that can tell me what's going on in their body and why maybe they're experiencing the mood that they're experiencing at that time. So to get onto some more specific to exercise, when you are on your period in that menstrual phase, you are likely to feel more lethargic. You are bleeding, right? You're getting rid of stuff. So your iron is likely lower. So you want to focus on more of those low impact exercises, the light yoga, the walks, with a friend, not, getting our heart rate up and hitting that 𝗓𝗏𝗃𝗃 phase. You may notice that you're more drained and you're not able to sustain that during that time in your cycle. In the second phase of your cycle, the follicular phase, this is where you tend to start to maybe feel like you have more energy. You're building that energy, right? Your estrogen is climbing during this phase. So you may be able to focus more on that resistance and endurance training. So brisk walks, hiking, weight training, things like that may be better during this phase of your cycle. In the third phase, in your ovulation phase, you may feel really good with those high intensity workouts, the spinning, the interval training, things like that. You may be able to do those during other phases as well, but pay attention to your body. And then finally, in your luteal phase, that's where you might start to feel worse. It may feel like it's harder to recover. That's when a lot of people start to have those PMS, PMDD symptoms. You start to feel more down. Your spouses, your partners, your friends, you may start to notice some of those mood, changes. And so, exercise is maybe a little harder. You can still do some of that intensity, but your energy may be draining a little bit. So it's important to just keep those things in mind when we're talking about exercising to your cycle and thinking about that well-rounded approach. So I couldn't talk about exercise without talking a little bit about the cycle syncing and why that is important for you as a female, and how that can affect you. So we know that exercise is crucial for our mental health. It's crucial because of the endorphins, the cortisol, the hormones, the neurotransmitters that are all going on inside our body, and we can assist those by the type of exercise that we're doing and when we're doing it. So if you're constantly feeling drained, like exhausted during exercise, before, during, or after exercise, you may want to consider the type of exercise that you're doing. But I still want you to get out and exercise. Some of our bodies, we've pushed them to the max for so long that we need to recover. That may mean very light exercise during all phases of our cycle, because you have to allow your body to recuperate. So maybe it just means I need to go on regular walks and get some exercise, low weights, the 3 to 5 pound weights, because my body just needs to catch up. So it's not saying don't exercise at all, but it is saying take it slow, do a lighter approach. We want your body to move, but we don't want to damage our body in the process. So consider these things and how exercise affects your mental health. I hope you learned something today, and I appreciate you joining me, and I will see you again next week.